Hey, welcome back to Album April. It's April 7th, and today I listened to Revolver by the Beatles. Yes, I am sick right now, you can probably hear that, but anyway, picking one Beatles album to listen to was the hardest choice of all the choices I had to make while coming up with this month. I could have gone with White Album, Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper's, but I decided to go with Revolver because it seemed like the safe choice. I'm allowed a little bit of cowardice every now and then, as a treat. So anyway, what was my first impression of Revolver? It sounds like the 60s, just the 60s decade made into an album. That's probably due to the fact that the Beatles are a huge part of 60s culture. It has a couple of sitar bhangra style songs, and it also has a protest song right at the beginning called Taxman. He takes your taxes, and that's the song. The songs were all kind of varied in sound. They definitely got pretty experimental. On the last song on the album, Tomorrow Never Knows, there was a lot of really weird noises that I don't even really know how to describe. It's also one of those albums where it's like if they're talking about the ocean, you're gonna hear sounds of the ocean. If they're talking about like birds, you're gonna hear the sound of birds. I guess they're trying to make it really immersive. There definitely were elements of that 1960s psychedelic type of vibe in Revolver. As for my favorite song on the album, I think I would have to go with Eleanor Rigby. It sounded really interesting. I liked the content of it. I think that the story was they just saw a tombstone that said Eleanor Rigby and they thought that's a cool name and then they just made a song about her. I might be wrong about that, but overall, I'd say that this is the most even in quality album I've listened to thus far. Most albums have a couple standouts, a couple duds, but I'd say in Revolver, all the songs are okay. If I had to pick one that I would put at the bottom, it would probably be Dr. Robert. It just seems like the most pointless song on the album. I'm sure Dr. Robert is a reference to something I don't know or particularly care because the song isn't very catchy or compelling to me. And lastly, we got to the question of, does this album hold up? And I'd say in general, yeah. From what I can tell, Revolver was revolutionary in the way that it actually took the idea of a studio album and used that to its fullest potential, doing things in the album that you couldn't do live, using the studio as a sort of instrument. Nowadays, that seems like common sense. Like, of course, you can do stuff in the studio that you can't do live, and you can use that to your advantage, but back then, apparently, it wasn't that widespread of a thing. And I think the fact that this album seems so intertwined with 60s culture really is a testament to how much of an effect the Beatles had on 60s culture. In a vacuum, Revolvers just sort of seems like 14 decent songs in a row, but in context, it amounted to a lot more than that. Nothing about it really seems groundbreaking by today's standards, but at the time, it was a trendsetter. And even if you look at it on its own, Revolver still is a decent album. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you tomorrow.